What's up, marker heads? It's Karen from Art by Karen E. Haley, and this is the fire tutorial. In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to draw a basic flame, and I also have some useful information that I'll show in a moment. I made some cards that I compiled from doing a bunch of research from looking at fire and using references to kind of learn about how fire works, what it looks like, and hopefully it'll be helpful for you guys. I'm not going to read the cards, I'm just going to show them on the screen, and you guys can pause the screen, or you can click the links in the description below to find the scanned copies of these, which will be on my DeviantArt, and I hope that this is helpful for you. So let's get started. This card here is basically an anatomy of the flame kind of breakdown. It breaks it down into the different colors that I used from top to bottom, and it also kind of divides it into different areas that the flame is made up of. And you guys can check this out on my DeviantArt, or you can pause the screen now and kind of read it. And that's basically just an easy breakdown to kind of show you, for instance, the tip is where the most color is, the middle part is very white hot, the base is transparent or translucent with bluish edges often, and it usually follows the shape of what it's burning. And then the light down here, the light is basically just one general glow. There's no real cast shadow. There might be a bit of reflection if you're drawing a candle, because there's a little bit of liquid wax down here. But other than that, unless there's something in the way, there won't be much of a won't be many cast shadows down here. And that's basically the very simplest breakdown that I can do of a flame. If I start talking about it, then it'll take me forever. So yeah. The other piece of information that I have to share with you are the notes that I made when I was making this little study about fire. For instance, how the flames curve around the log instead of just coming out the top of it. Usually fire kind of starts in the bottom and curves around it. How flames generally start to head in an upward direction. Fire doesn't burn downwards because it's hot and it goes up. Heat rises, things like that. I'm sure this is kind of difficult to read on screen, so I will again give you the link in the description to this piece of information, which will be on my DeviantArt, and you guys can find that by following the link in the description below. I also have some coloring tips, which I will just kind of show on screen as I read them. So the first one I have is that flames look best, in my opinion, unoutlined. I do a sort of lineless approach to my fire because I feel like it gives it more luminosity. So here's this one here. If this had outlines in either black or even just red or orange, it might kind of take away from the three-dimensional look of the fire, and also kind of take away from its brightness. So I tend to shy away from outlines when I'm doing fire. To address the fact that I'm not using outlines, what I recommend doing is using a yellow marker to sketch the flame. Another coloring tip that I have is to use dark backgrounds. It serves two purposes. One, it really shows how bright the flame is. You can go for a really dark background like this, or you can do sort of a mid-tone dark like I did here with this. I did kind of a mid-tone red color, and it shows how bright the flame is, but also there's darker areas around it to show how light the fire is. Fire, like, you can show it during the day. I mean, you can see it during the day, but it shows up a lot better in artwork when you use darker scenery to play up the contrast. Another advantage of dark backgrounds is that you can use the dark color to shape your fire. So I used my dark marker to really define the edges of my flame here, and it really makes it pop out, and it gives it more definition than if I had kind of used, you know, a plain mid-tone. Like even this fire does not have as much brightness to it as this one. And a lot of that has to do with how much contrast there is between the two, but also because I was able to outline around the other one a lot better than this one. This one's outlines are a little bit less clear. In terms of the colors you need, I would recommend having at the very least a blender, an orange, a yellow, and a blue. Fire is usually orange, yellow, and then white, and then there's some blue like I have here. Sometimes fire has a red cast to it, but it's usually not a whole lot of it. It's usually more on the orange and yellow side, and so I would definitely recommend having at least an orange, a yellow, a blue, and a blender. I think that those are the most essential colors that you'll need for fire. You'll also want to have a very dark color like this BV29 or something like that, because when fire burns stuff, it turns it into carbon and it makes it black. So you're going to need a dark color to use for your fuel, at least where the fire is burning it, because fire's going to turn things black, so you're going to need some black to use in your fire pictures, for the most part. The next tip is to work light to dark, especially with fire. You want to do the flames first and then your background, because like I said, doing the flames and then coloring in the background helps you to define the shape of the flames. But also, if you make a mistake and actually accidentally color over where your flames were going to be, you're kind of out of luck. It's a lot easier to draw the flames, because then you'll know where they're going to be. You'll be able to see where they are. You can, for the most part, avoid them unless you have a pretty bad mistake happen. So I really recommend starting with the flames when you're drawing something that has fire in it. It's going to save you so much time. It'll help your edges to be more sharp, because if you're trying to use all that blender work that you're going to be doing with that background already colored in, you're going to have some really blurry lines and your flame's not going to look very defined. Finally, I would just like to recommend that you guys check out references, check out pictures, use them to study, look up even like articles on different colored fire or why fire looks the way it does, and it'll really help you to understand the subject you're working on, even if you don't like carbon copy the references you're looking at and just kind of observe the elements that make up that picture. You can really learn a lot from references, at least for your own benefit. You don't have to use the references to make all your illustrations, of course not. Like, I never really use references to decide exactly how my illustrations are going to look, but the knowledge that I gain when I look at references is definitely always implemented into my illustrations. So references can be massively helpful, so I really recommend you guys use them. Okay, that being said, with all of the information that I have here for you guys, I feel like we might be ready to move on to the demo. So get your markers ready and get your paper. Just so you know, I'm using cardstock for this demo, and I'm using Copic markers, of course, for the medium, and I sketched it with a red pencil. So if you need to know what the materials are, there they are, and let's get right into the demo. First step, you need to sketch the candle and wick. I used a red pencil and sketched very lightly. The lighter the better, because it makes it a lot easier, at least for lineless work, to get that look without leaving any visible marks. And then when you want to sketch the flame, you want to use a light yellow marker. I used Y000, and it works really well. Next, we're going to make a gradient from dark to light, starting at the very tip of the flame. We're going to start with YR18, then YR14, then Y17, and then Y11, and then using the blender, we're going to soften that edge where it meets the white area of the flame. We want to make sure that the ink is really blending together nicely, so we want to do this quickly. And then we want to also follow the shape of the flame and kind of create that pointed end of the fire. Step 3, we define the edges of the flame using a pale yellow marker. I used Y11 and I blended the inner area of the flame with the blender to kind of soften that line between the yellow and the white of the paper. For step 4, we define the edge of the base of the flame using blue. I used B02 Robin's Egg Blue, and I blended that into the inner area of that base of the flame with the blender. And then I also blended that blue with the blender along the existing edges of the flame for a seamless transition between the yellow and the blue without it turning too green. For step 5, we're going to color the candle. The first thing you want to do is use YR12 to illustrate the rim and the near side, leaving part of the near side uncolored to give it that transparent area of the rim. And then layer YR12 over the first pass, covering that uncolored area. And then use YR12 to show the inner surface of the candle. And by that I mean making that little part underneath the wick look flat. And then blend the rim with Y17 to show that this area is thinner wax that is catching the color of the light from the flame. For step 6, we darken the candle to add some contrast and to show that part of the candle is lit up and part of it is in shadow. So what we want to do is darken the bottom part of the candle with C4 and then blend it with YR12. And then I darkened the rim and sides of the candle with YR14 to bring the brightness back up in that orange color. And also the rim is actually a thick edge of wax, and you'll want to make that a little darker because it's not as translucent as the rest of the rim of the candle. Step 7 is adding the ember to the end of the wick. First we use a bit of a yellow just to make a little ember, and then add some orange in small amounts to make it look like it's glowing. And then you can add a little bit more ember areas along the edge of the wick near the end. That kind of shows that the fire is consuming the wick. And then what you do is lay a base of a dark color. I used C4 and I avoided coloring over the embers, and then layered a darker color on top. For this I used BV29. And you use this really dark marker to define the edges of the embers. On to step 8, where we fill in the background. I used BV29, and that's because I like to use a dark color for the contrast. And I started at one side of the tip of the flame and took advantage of this dark color to define the edge of the flame. I used 1 or 2 long, smooth strokes to define the edge of that flame and the candle. And then I filled in that first half of the background. If your background has more varied colors, this might be a little bit different for you, but in this case, just one solid color, you just fill it in and then repeat the steps for the second half, blending where the two halves of color meet. and this really gives it a nice sharp edge and makes that flame look very crisp and bright. Step 9 is only really necessary if step 8 causes any mistakes. This is kind of the touch-up step. So what I did was I touched up the candle to make that top rim of wax look thicker, because when I defined the edges of the candle, I made it look too thin around the edges, and it almost made that rim of wax look paper thin. So what I did was I used YR14 to draw a new edge slightly inside the outline of the candle that was made when I colored in the background. Now we're on the last step, step 10. What we're going to do is make the base of that flame look transparent. So what we want to do is use Y11 around the top edge of that transparent part of the flame, and then blend that with C4 as it gets lower and more towards that little base of the flame. And then repeat with the sides with B02 and also C4. And then this will leave it kind of a mid-tone look. We want to make that look very transparent, so we're going to darken that area of C4 with a little bit of C6. We want to be sure to include the back edge of the candle, that wax that would be seen through that transparent area, by adding a little bit of orange. And then we want to add some highlights on the edges of the candle where the wax would be melting by using a gel pen. And we're done! We've done a candle with a simple flame, and this is a really fun subject to work with, and I really encourage you guys to try it out. And it can help you with learning how to draw more complicated types of flames, and it's a really good starting point for maybe if you wanted to draw a Charizard and you wanted to draw his fiery tail. This would be a really fun exercise to do, to kind of feel your way around flames and how they look. I'm feeling like I'm going to be doing more fire tutorials in the future. I think I mentioned that earlier on in the video. Let me know what kinds of other tutorials you guys would like to see, and I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you look forward to seeing more stuff on my channel. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys next time.